So one of the biggest challenges that my students have when it comes to mastering grammar and punctuation and all that good stuff is that they struggle with memorizing comma rules. And it's totally understandable because it seems like there's over like 20,000 comma rules that you have to know for the SAT. There's actually only about 20 plus or so, right, comma rules, do's and don'ts, right, that you have to master for the SAT. If you want to learn about that, I actually created a 2-hour masterclass on commas that you can find in the video section in my channel. You can maybe look at that after you watch this video. But in this video, I'm going to talk about several comma rules that are absolutely important. They're absolutely necessary for you to not just know, but to master if you want to score well on visual SAT reading and writing sections. Okay, so we'll talk about those comma concepts today. Those are going to be, it's going to be one, mainly it's going to be talking about appositives, right? And if you're not sure what that word is, you want to stick around and watch this video because I'll break down everything you need to know about how to solve appositives with commas on the digital SAT. So let's go ahead and jump into this, you guys. Now remember, all of these questions that you guys see from this playlist are found in, are created from College Board. So College Board has these practice test questions that you can download for free on their website. Please go ahead and do so. You'll know what test number, what module, and what question number it is, right, on each of these slides that I create. And I'm not, using any of their explanations in these videos. I'm just giving you guys new ways of approaching the questions, right? Kind of telling you guys what I see and what I do. And so I'm really kind of making these videos kind of unique, right? But just using the free material that College Board already gives, right, to every single person on earth that you can download for free on their website. Okay, so just making sure that letting you guys know that these aren't my questions, these are College Board questions, but the only things that are mine are the strategies and the information that I'm going to tell you that will really help you guys, right, solve these questions, not just for this question, but for future questions that look similar to these questions. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into this, you guys. Now, remember, before you read the passage, I need you guys to take a look at the answer choices first. Okay, so the students will ask me, well, why do we have to take a look at the answer choices first, right? And the reason for that is because looking at the answer choices will give you a very good clue as to what the SAT is testing you on for that particular question, right? Now, that's extremely powerful because if you know what the SAT is testing you on for this question, that'll really affect the way that you read, right? You'll be able to read more effectively, right? You'll be able to read with a more specific focus or a more specific intention, right? And it gives you a lot more control, right, over your test taking experience versus if you did it the other way around. If you just started reading the passage and then you take a look at the answer choices, you're going to be like, oh, I didn't know they were testing me on this. I have to go back and reread and I have to read in a different style, right? So it's just going to make your test taking a lot more inefficient, right? So take a look at the answer choices first and try to get a sense of what it is the SAT is testing you on, okay? Now, it is true, you guys, the SAT can test you on more than one concept for a single question, but you don't have to try to figure everything out. Just try to figure out one concept, right, or question type that the SAT is testing you on and go ahead and start with that, okay? So if we take a look at the answer choices here, just take a broad or a high-level view of the answer choices. Well, what do we notice? Well, we notice that all of the words are the same, right? Critic, Steina, chine, claims. All of the words are exactly the same in all of the answer choices. We can all see that. The only difference is we have commas in different places, right? So some answer choices have comma next to critic and others don't. Some of them have comma after chine and some of them don't, right? Some of them have commas after claims and some of them don't, right? And we know that we don't have any other punctuation marks other than commas. So we know that this question is testing you specifically on comma rules, and that's it, okay? We don't see any other punctuation marks like semicolons or colons, right? So we know we're not being tested on punctuations in general. We're just being tested on specifically, right, comma rules, okay? Now, guys, if you're brand new to the SAT, this is really important. Your very first step that you want to take, right, to succeeding on this test is you want to get familiar. You want to familiarize yourself with the question types. Right, so get friendly with the test, right? Start to study the test and start to figure out what are the different types or the different ways it can test you on grammar, And the best way to figure that out, right, is to watch videos like this, right? But also to study the answer choices, because the answer choices are a very big clue to tell you, right, what concepts or question types, right, you'll encounter for that particular question, okay, especially with grammar. So once we kind of figure out we're being tested on commas, then from there we can read the passage with intention. Okay, so now it says, in 1937, Chinese-American screen actor Anna May Wong, who had portrayed numerous villains and secondary characters but never found a heroine, finally got a starring role in Paramount Pictures' Daughter of Shanghai, a film that critic Stina Chine claims expanded the range of possibilities for Asian images on screen. Now, here's another tip too. If this is the very first video of mine that you're watching, when you're reading the passage, don't just read the blank. Don't just skip over this blank, but actually read it with answer choice A plugged in. Some students kind of read it like a film that blank expanded. It doesn't make any sense to do, right? Because it's going to be much more confusing for you, right? So instead, plug in answer choice A and then read it. Say a film that critic Stina Chine claims expanded the range of possibilities for Asian images on screen. Don't worry if it's wrong, but you just want to plug it in, right? Just to kind of read it, to kind of figure out the context, okay? And also, you guys, don't stop in the middle of the sentence and then try to figure out the answer. Don't do that. Instead, you want to read it to the end of the sentence, okay? Read it to the end of the sentence, though, okay? Now, next thing that I want you guys to do is, if you guys have printed out this test, I want you guys to underline the phrase critic Stina Chine. Underline that, okay? Now, next to critic, I want you guys to write down, this is going to be your first noun, right? This is your first noun phrase, critic. And then Stina Chine, maybe you can underline that with a different color. Stina Chine, this is going to be your second noun phrase. Okay, so notice how we have these two nouns that are next to each other, right? Critic, Stina Chine, right? Critic is your first noun, and then Stina Chine is your second noun, okay? So this is where I want you guys to know the concept, right, called an appositive. Okay, so next to or underline or below the second noun phrase, write down appositive. An appositive, you guys, is the second of two noun phrases. An appositive is the second of two noun phrases when they're placed back to back like this. Okay, so Stina Chine is known as the appositive in grammar. Now, what is the job of the appositive? The job of the appositive is to clarify the first noun. So in this case, it's just kind of telling us the name of the critic, right? It was critic Stina Chine. So Stina Chine is the name. It kind of clarifies that first noun. That's what appositives do. Okay, that's the function or the job of an appositive, right? Now, grammatically, what you have to know, what you will be tested on is you have to figure out whether this appositive is essential information or whether it's non-essential. So this is where the comma rules kind of come into play, right? So if information is essential, you do not put commas, right? You have no commas, right, around the appositive. However, if the information is non-essential, then you do want to surround the appositive with commas, right? So you want to put a comma before the name, Stina Chine, and then you want to put a comma at the end of the appositive, right, after Chine. So now the next logical question you might ask is, well, Jin teacher, how do you know whether the appositive is essential or non-essential? I would say to you, that's a wonderful question, student. Okay, so how you figure out whether the appositive is essential or non-essential is you have to take a look at the first noun. Okay, so the first noun here is critic. Okay, now what you're looking for, what you're checking for is this. If this first noun refers to just one, if it refers to one person, one place, one thing, if it refers to a singular, then the appositive is non-essential. Which means what? We're going to put two commas around it, right? However, if the first noun refers to more than one, right? If it refers to several or many, right? More than one, then the appositive is essential, which means that we don't put commas around it. Okay, so that's what we're trying to figure out first, right? So that's what I'm trying to solve first here, is whether or not we put commas around Steine Chine. Okay, now, so if we take a look at it, you guys, critic, right? Well, there can be more than one critic, right? So it says a film that critic. So critic, there can be several critics. There can be more than one critic. So because there can be more than one critic, right? We know that Steine Chine is going to be essential information. Right? So what does that tell us, right? If we know that it's going to be essential, we know that there's not going to be any comma that comes before the appositive, right? Because there should be no commas around essential information, right? So as soon as we see a comma before Steine Chine, then we can cross those out, right? So we can cross A and B out for sure, just because that comma right before Steine. Now, nextly, we take a look at answer choice C and D. Now, here's another comma rule that I want you guys to write down. Okay, so this is a very good one. This is a comma don't. If we take a look at answer choice D, you guys, right? Notice how we have, so the comma rule is this. The comma rule says you should never is a strong word, but I'm using the word never, right? So you should never put one comma, you should never put a comma between the subject and the verb, right? So you should never have just one comma that comes between a subject and its verb, right? So that's just not grammatically correct. It violates a comma rule, right? So we know the subject here is what? Critic Steine Chine. That's my subject, and the verb is going to be claims, right? So notice how here we only have one comma that comes between the subject and the verb, right? So this is going to be wrong because it violates that comma rule. So this comma rule is a very important one to know. The SAT loves creating wrong answer choices that violate this comma rule. They put one comma between the subject and the verb, okay? That'll never be the case. Right? The only time that you're going to have a comma between a subject and a verb is when you have two commas that come between the subject and the verb. Now, you guys have seen, if you guys know what non-essential information is, you guys have often seen non-essential information that's placed between a subject and a verb. In fact, I kind of see that right over here. So notice how, we have Chinese American screen actor Anna May Wong. That's my subject. And then now notice how we have a comma here. Then we have non-essential information, who had portrayed numerous villains and secondary characters, but never a heroine. And then we have another comma here. So notice here how we have two commas that come between the subject and the verb, right? Because the verb is going to be got, right? So again, I said, we're never going to have just one comma that comes between the subject and the verb. If you ever see commas between the subject and the verb, right, you're going to see two commas that come between the subject and the verb. And usually when you see that, almost always it's going to be non-essential information, right? That's a very common place to put non-essential information, is between the subject and the verb, okay? So it's just good to know, a good comma rule to know. So we know that answer choice D is going to be wrong because of that, right? And then we're done, right? So we now know that C here is going to be the correct answer, okay? So guys, when you're dealing with comma rules specifically, notice what we did, right? We have to we're going to check for, so this comma question, or this question actually tested us on several comma rules, right? So one of those was the appositives, essential or non-essential. And another one was, right, putting commas between a subject and a verb, right? So this question tested us on two. It's actually testing us on a third comma rule, but we don't have to talk about that because we already got to the correct answer. But just know that when the question is testing you on more than one thing, more than one concept, the best way to solve these questions is by focusing on one concept at a time. Okay, so that's why you saw me kind of working on just the appositives first before I moved on to this second comma rule, right? Comma between the subject and the verb. That'll be my strategy that I use for myself that's helped me get into the top 99 percentile multiple times on the SAT, the ACT, and the GMAT exams. And it's the exact same strategy that I tell to all of my students. And I worked with over 7,000 students, really helping them, right, achieve top scores as well. And that's the special tip that I want to give to you guys too, right, is focus on doing things one thing at a time, and you'll find success on this test, okay? Guys, please make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It'll really help to share this video message to other students like yourself who want to improve their scores on the SAT so that they can get into the college of their dreams. so that they can kind of take steps to achieving their dream life, right? That would really appreciate, well, I'd really appreciate if you guys do that. I get super excited, right? When I see, thumbs up, and when I see subscribe buttons, it helps me. It makes me want to work harder for you guys. It makes me, motivates me, right, to want to create more videos for you. So please, you guys can kind of share in that sort of mission. We can kind of be a part of that mission together. And also, you guys, please make sure to comment in the comment box below. Tell me one thing that you learned in the class. Tell me one thing that you liked about the class. Tell me one thing that you found helpful about the class, any of those things. And also tell me one thing that you want to learn. What is one thing that you really want to learn? If you guys write that clearly in the comment section, I create videos, right, based off of your comments. In fact, these videos that I'm creating right here are based off of one of the comments from, I believe the name is Learner, Learn, which is an awesome name. But Learn wanted to get videos about college boards practice tests, right? So I'm making those for you guys here. Okay. So guys, until next time, make sure to always stay curious, right? Never stop learning. Keep moving forward. You guys got this. Take care, y'all.